Kia ora, no mai haere mai. Hello and welcome to this guide on promoting and managing continence for people living with dementia, mati wareware. It was developed from listening to the stories of people living with dementia and their care partners, that is, the people with whom they share their love, lives, laughter and life's challenges. It's the result of a research project from the University of Auckland and was co-created with care partners and is based on the things we wish we knew earlier. You are not alone. Dementia mati wareware affected almost 70,000 people living in Aotearoa, New Zealand in 2020. And of those, around 35,000 were affected by urinary incontinence and approximately 18,500 were affected by fecal incontinence. Dementia mati wareware is considered a disability. So, disability support services are there to help. This presentation is split into two parts. The first part focuses on getting into the system, so that is understanding and connecting to the services that can support the dementia and continence journey. The second half is about practical everyday strategies, things to try when you're faced with continence challenges. This is a map of the system describing how all of the pieces fit together. Your doctor or general practitioner is the main access point to services. Some services, seen here in green, require a GP to complete and sign part of the application form. Specialist services, in blue, focus on the diagnosis and treatment of dementia mati wareware and many of the underlying causes of incontinence. Community services provide most of the assessment and treatment that will be needed in a home environment, and these will be the focus of the next few slides. GPs provide many of the day-to-day services required to support you helping with dementia mati wareware and continence challenges. There's a whole list here of things that is worth talking to your GP about, though please remember a GP only has a 15-minute appointment as standard, so if you need more time, talk to the practice nurse, get an understanding of what's required and then decide on your appointment length. There are a lot of services you can be referred to. Your GP is the best person to talk to about specialist services. But when it comes to community services, there are a lot of them. So we would suggest, at least in the first instance, prioritising the referrals. Our top recommendation is to ask for a referral to the Needs Assessment and Service Coordination Agency, otherwise known as NASC, and for continence management, a referral to the continence nurse specialist. So needs assessments and service coordination agencies are the gateway to disability services, and disability services include many things, such as personal care, household management, Meals on Wheels, specific services for people living with dementia. There's a whole host, and you can find a link here on the bottom of the slide that will take you to many, many more examples. Even if you don't need any of these services right now, being assessed speeds up the process when those services really are required. Now, just to make it tricky, NASC agencies go by different names in different regions. So there's a link on the top of the slide to take you to a website where you can find your local agency. And our top tip from the participants in our study is to remind you that NASC agencies are regional. So if you are moving from one region to another, talk to your local NASC agencies and your continence product suppliers before you move so that you can minimise the delays and disruptions that can occur when moving regions. The community continence nurse specialist is the person to help with assessment, advice and management of incontinence, and also within a set criteria can provide continence products or pads. If you don't meet the criteria for free Health New Zealand products, if you want more pads or you want different kinds of products, there are other options. You may be eligible for disability allowance to cover the costs of products, or you may simply want to access a private supply. There are links on this slide to help with both of those situations. Our top tip is that continence needs can change over time. Even if you didn't get free products last time, do not hesitate to ask for a further assessment if the situation changes. Disability allowance is a regular payment for people who have ongoing costs related to a disability. And remember, dementia mati wari is considered a disability. It may cover the costs of incontinence products if you are not eligible for a supply from Health New Zealand. There are, of course, eligibility criteria, and this is one of those forms that your GP has to sign to authorise your application. There are links on this slide to help. We can't emphasise enough just how important specialist community support groups were to our participants. The Dementia Services, Carer Support, Kaupapa Māori and Age Concern are all part of that picture, and there are links here on the left. We've added to this slide a group of health professionals known as allied health professionals. There are a whole lot of health professionals in this group, but we would really like to point out occupational therapists, physiotherapists and social workers. Occupational therapists and physiotherapists often work together to provide you with mobility equipment. They provide standard equipment, often funded by Health New Zealand. So if you want something a little bit special, maybe you want something pretty or something that folds down really small, then you may just have to shop around. And the big box retailers, Kmart's, the warehouse, the chemist warehouse, are some good places to look. You'll often find online providers, and there are some small specialist disability stores that are worth looking into. Social workers are really good people to help you navigate that system. So if you are getting a bit stuck in the complexity of all of the health services, a social worker is a real ally. There are private providers of particularly physio and occupational therapy, and you'll find a link on this slide to those people. Overall, we just think if you get the right equipment in, it reduces a lot of the stress involved in keeping people safe and well at home. And last but by no means least, mobility parking. The participants in our study who were living with dementia and were able to walk didn't think about disability parking. But disability parking is there for people who would be unsafe if they didn't have close supervision. So completely applies to people living with dementia and those with incontinence. So being able to park close to toilets is really key. So please do apply for a mobility permit. There is a cost associated. Again, you may be able to get some help with disability allowance, and the links are on this slide. This page is simply a checklist, an opportunity to tick off services as you access them. Okay, we're on to practical strategies. The next set of slides is just about everyday advice and everyday solutions that our participants discovered. You can see here some great quotes about people living with dementia are actually really resourceful adults and will often develop their own strategies. So watch them, see what they do. You might find the answer lies just there. Okay, I'm not going to read everything on this slide. A couple of things, again, reinforcing the mobility card is quite helpful, so you can park near a toilet. The card's weight card is just something you can download and carry in your wallet or purse, so you don't have to explain every time how much you need to use the loo. The other thing we found from our participants was that many large retailers, supermarkets, DIY stores, the kind of place you have to go often have toilets, and even if they're not open to the public, it's worth asking. Physical access to toilets can be difficult, particularly if you have mobility limitations. We generally found that the disability, the wheelchair accessible toilets, and the parents' rooms were the most useful. Disposing of used continence products was often a challenge because generally they're larger than your standard product, and for men there aren't usually disposal bins within public toilets. Again, the parents' rooms were the places that had the larger disposal bins, or if push comes to shove, take a plastic bag with you and take the product home for disposal. Beware, hand washing can be a challenge. Good old hand sanitizer in the car is really useful. Our participants found with dementia sometimes it was hard for the person living with dementia to recognise a toilet, and sometimes to be able to find that toilet. There are lots of things here that can be tried. Some will work for you or your person living with dementia, and some may not be so helpful. It is quite individual, but do try signage, do try low-level lighting, night light kind of things from the bedroom to the bathroom. And do try simple things like just pointing out where the loo was on an ordinary basis when people arrive. Mobility challenges are real. Do talk to your district nurse, occupational therapist, physiotherapist. If you don't know who they are, ask your GP. There are definitely toilet seats, seat raisers, walking aids that can all help get you from A to B. And again, the big box retailers are quite useful too. One of the things that sometimes happens is that people don't recognise a toilet seat, and making that a different colour can be quite helpful too. Generally recommended as red and blue. You know, physically using a loo is a real challenge. There are multiple steps, and any one of those steps can provide a bit of a challenge. But one of the ones that was really common was getting caught up with buttons, zips, buckles and belts. One of our participants had a great idea. They opened the seams of clothing and put poppers in so that clothes could be popped open, the kind of equivalent of stripper pants. It just means that people don't get caught up having to worry about buckles and belts. Accidents happen, it's one of those things. The key here really was about being prepared. If you know that accidents could be part of what happens in a day-to-day life, having a go-to accident bag, being prepared, that was the main message really. There are a whole range of continence products and suppliers. Health New Zealand tends to use one preferred supplier, but if you're purchasing your own, our advice is shop around. There are some links on this page to help you do just that. The best product is simply one that works. So that is one that is matched for leakage type and volume, one that is comfortable, and one that you have confidence in. Our participants didn't particularly like having to wear continence products, but in the words of one, the alternative is much worse. All of these are links. They go to websites that could be useful. On behalf of the research team, I would like to thank our funders, our PI, Professor Vanessa Berholt, but mostly our participants for their generous and open sharing of their stories.